A couple of months ago, my boyfriend and I moved into a new apartment. It was spacious and in pretty good shape, with hardwood floors and plenty of sunlight. Unfortunately, the square footage made the place feel more bare and empty. I needed area rugs to put over some of the creakier boards, some art for the walls, a bed frame and a second AC unit. Most of those are pretty self-explanatory, and we needed the AC for what we were calling the living room, which was a bare room with a large TV, a PlayStation and an office chair. Since my boyfriend is unemployed, that is where he has been spending most of his days, although I set up a folding table, so he can roll over there and maybe use his laptop instead. Well, as you might have guessed, we saw an ad on the Facebook marketplace for an estate sale. I decided to really go back all in on that opportunity, showing up early and with a rented van. It was an old detached ranch style house, and there were rows of stuff lined up in the driveway and on the lawn. We had our pick of the furniture and they were basically just giving it away. Most of it was literal junk, covered in cat scratches and cigarette burns. But anything that was metal or unharmed we salvaged: a metal bed frame, a large decorated chest with a padlock, one antique porcelain doll, and of course an AC for the living room. The chest was really intriguing. They said they had no idea where to find a key or what was inside, but since they were just looking to liquidate everything, they would sell it as is. The doll had to be at least 70 years old, with some yellowing on its lace, and hairline fractures filled in with black dust, resembling wrinkles. Everything had some dry black dust caked into its crevices, so we brushed and vacuumed the furniture on the sidewalk before bringing it in. The chest ended up on our landing where we kept our shoes and boots. My boyfriend said he would pick up a bolt cutter, speculating it might be full of bonds or stocks or baseball cards or old comics. Still, that ambition kinda subsided once we got the AC set up in a window and he was able to get back to gaming without the heat limiting how long his sessions went. I set up the doll in our bedroom, really well planted in the middle of a shelf, to make sure it did not fall and break. He was excited for the chest, but I felt like the doll might actually be the item worth something. We would joke about going on Antique Roadshow and seeing which one would be worth the most, but as the week went by, neither of us had made an effort to look into our purchases. The other thing that had not changed is that every day I would go to work, and when I would get home, my boyfriend's laptop was still in the same spot. He was in the same spot too, yelling into a headset and playing video games. I can't say I did not feel some resentment, but it was also unfair for me to put pressure on him. He had been feeling a little sick and tired since the estate sale. I touched my hand to his forehead, and he had a slight fever, and he had developed a bit of a gravelly cough. One night I was having a dream where the doll was speaking to me from the shelf, telling me in a sweet childlike voice that she was extremely important. She said she had traveled from Europe, had been passed down over several generations, and was thanking me for rescuing her from that dank dusty house. My dream was interrupted by a loud thump, and I sprung out of bed. The doll was in the same position I had left her, but my boyfriend was not in bed. I went into the living room, and he was lying there on the floor, controller in hand, wheezing loudly. A million thoughts were going through my head, including how we could not afford an ambulance, but when I realized he was unresponsive, I decided we had no choice, and I dialed 911. They told me he might be having a seizure and walked me through the process while an ambulance was dispatched. As I held him, he was burning up and coughed up some black mucus a couple of times. When the ambulance showed up, I followed them in my car and spent all night at the hospital waiting for results. They told me he was stable, but they had to insert a breathing tube. He had some sort of advanced fungal infection, and based on the scans his lungs had a lot of viscous fluid. I was shown a digital image on an iPad and it just looked like an X-ray, but with these black strings crisscrossing all over like cobwebs. I asked if that was inside him. They asked if he was covered under my insurance. The next morning they told me I should go home, that he is stable, but they were trying to pick the best course of action to take. There was a lot of foreign matter in his lungs, but they would let me know what the next steps would be. When I got home, I realized the air conditioner had been running all night and the room had a deep moist chill. I mopped the spot where he had coughed up the black phlegm and realized the floor looked a different color. As I mopped, it looked lighter. It was like there was a little bit of black dust littered everywhere. Sports, I thought to myself. I went over to the air conditioner and pulled off the vent. The filter was black and gummy, and as the cover came off it created long black strings like stretching gum. I panicked and let go of the cover, and it fell slowly as the strings attaching it to the air conditioner stretched thin. I was disgusted and in shock. I had no idea what to do. I unplugged the unit and stepped away, staring at it in horror and disbelief. All I could think of was calling the police. Do they handle something like this? How does one contact the CDC? Then the long black strings that connected to the cover contracted like a muscle, pulling the cover back onto the air conditioner. A jolt of electric fear ran through me, and I stopped thinking rationally. I ran towards it and just kicked it with all my might, causing the window frame to snap and launching the AC unit out the window. On the sidewalk it was somewhat dented, and most of its plastic bits had gone flying, and a black puddle started to form around it. I left the window open and went to the hospital. I felt like I had information for them, but they knew about it already. My boyfriend was suffering from acute invasive aspergillosis. In other words, that thing was living inside him. It was shrinking thanks to the antifungal drugs, but ultimately they wanted my permission to perform surgery and actually scrape it out. I asked them if that would kill it. They said my boyfriend would be safe, but I was asking about it, not him. When I got home I cleaned every surface I could with bleach, hoping that would do the trick. Once it was dark I took a shopping cart from the nearby strip mall and packed up the AC, the chest and the doll. I rolled the shopping cart to the end of the strip mall in front of a boarded up business and set the whole thing on fire with lighter fluid and free newspapers. The doll and the chest started to blacken quite quickly, but at some point the AC got hot enough and started to hiss and rattle. It gained enough momentum that it almost jumped out of the cart, smashing burning doll and chest into embers. The lid came off, and the insides ignited fiercely, with jets of flame almost shooting out of the unit. I remember smiling. There was something strangely poetic about that sight. Then I checked my messages and my heart sank. At least one of my difficult upcoming choices was going to be easy. I knew I was going to choose cremation for my now ex-boyfriend.